So hi everyone, this is Friar Rick with our latest installment of Tao Talks. With me today is Friar Nick Romeo, who is the Vocations Director for the Franciscan Friars. As you know, we are Franciscans, obviously, Franciscans Conventual, and we'll talk a bit more about what that means. And we belong to a province, an area called Our Lady of the Angels Province. And so Nick is our spanking brand new director.
That's true.
And so Nick, first thing people are curious, who are you, where do you come from? And tell us a bit of your story.
So again, I'm Nick Romeo, last name just like in Shakespeare. I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, and I've known the Friars really since I was about 8 years old. They came to my parish of St. Clements in, I think, 3rd grade. One of my first memories of the Friars was it was Halloween time, and the 3 guys of the parish came around through the school trick-or-treating, and they were dressed up, and as a little kid, it's like, oh, cool, they're real people.
That's the St. Clement Hofbauer?
It is.
Oh, I didn't know you were from there.
It's true.
So is it Richard and Santo and...
No, the first group was Mike Zelke,
Okay.
Richard Florick, and there was someone else there. Oh, Tim Kulbicki.
Tim Kulbicki. Okay, so
Yeah.
I visited that place, so it's kind of cool to know the characters.
One of them was a
wow.
pumpkin, one was Dracula, one was a bunch of grapes when they came around. Yeah. And then I went to our high school in Baltimore called Archbishop Curley. It took me a couple months to realize that the guys of the parish and the guys of the high school were the same people.
Yeah.
My freshman year, a religion teacher showed up to give a homily at Mass one weekend, and my head exploded. I was like, oh.
My worlds are colliding.
Yeah, look what's happening. They know me. So then, I guess my junior year of high school, you kind of have to start thinking about what do I actually want to do with my life, which is a big question for a 16-year-old. And a bunch of people in my life had said, you know, we think you'd make a good friar, or you know, lots of guys who come out of Curly, they wind up becoming friars. So mostly to shut those people up, I went through the motions of going online and filling out the request for information. And the vocation director at the time, Brother Mike Duffy, worked in the basement of Curly. Mm-hmm. So I'd interacted with him before, but you know, I didn't understand what his job was. And he saw me the next day. He knew who I was already, which I found really impressive, also a little bit disconcerting because I'd only met him once or twice, but clearly, it was clear from the way he interacted with me that I had been a topic of conversation in the friary at some point. And so that was, oh wow, they know who I am, and they're interested at a personal level. So I did a service week that summer. Guys from our school in Buffalo would come down to Philly with guys from Curly to do a week of service, and kind of lived a mini experience of the friar life. We prayed together, we did fraternity together, we did work together. I just really liked that. And what kind of started out as I just want to get this off the list of things became, oh no, this actually makes a lot of sense. And they say that they believe in a lot of the stuff that I'm finding myself to believe in, because I didn't like the choices a lot of my friends were making. And not only did they say they believe in these things, but they actually do them. And I knew the friars as real, down-to-earth people, and that was just really attractive. So kind of one thing led to another, and I joined them right out of high school. And now, 16 years later, it was 16 years this past, Monday, the 24th, was report date to candidacy when I was there. Yeah, so 16 years. So that's kind of the short version of the vocation story.
Cool.
And I think the thing that is one thing led to another is fundamentally I'm really happy in my vocation. Happy not always at a giggle tee-hee level, because some days are hard, but kind of fundamentally a contentment and at peace kind of keeps me going.
I think that's a really important question, that important word, contentment, right? There's a profound joy and happiness that the Lord gives us, but it's not, as he said, he kind of like chuckles. I mean, when you're facing difficult moments, you can be profoundly content in life and know that you're in the right place, even though it's a little bit hard, and still feel that sense of God's presence. So it's good to hear that it's been with you.
A perfect joy.
Perfect joy, as Francis would say, right? So, okay, so now you've been asked to be vocation director. What is that? What does that mean?
So the comparison that I've been using to describe to friends and former students who ask, like, brother, what are you doing? is sort of like the Army has recruiters whose job is to find people to join the Army. Essentially, that's my job. So my job is to kind of be the liaison between the friars as a community and the young men who are interested in joining us. So they have someone who's a face for the community who they can talk to and process the discernment. And the community has someone who can, I don't want to use the word judge, but who can see, will this person be a good fit for the community, and will the community be a good fit for this person?
So in a way, you're the face of the order, or this part of the order.
It's true, isn't that that's alarming?
Yeah, it's like
this is it.
This is it. Very good. So, so you're the recruiter for the friars, and we're the friars, Franciscan Friars Conventual. Now, a lot of people ask me, what is a conventual? Because we use that. Sometimes we say friars, sometimes we say conventuals. What does that mean?
It's one of those interlingo things that I think we use all the time,
Yeah.
but no one else actually knows what it means. So the short version is, after the death of Francis of Assisi, like any movements, after their founder dies, it splits off and like different people think the movement was about different things. The conventuals are kind of focused on, well, this is what Francis was really about, was living in larger communities in urban centers and ministering directly to people, especially the poor. So the conventual side of the Franciscan movement lived in convents, right, large houses of guys, hence conventual. So that our focus as friars within the Franciscan family is really the community itself. I always say that for lots of other religious communities, they live in community, but the community life is a means to an end. It makes whatever their ministry is just more practical and easier to do, whereas for us, community really is the ministry, the main one. That fraternity is the mission. I think that's probably what separates the conventuals from other religious orders, but I think also other branches of the Franciscan family. I think we are the ones who focus more on brotherhood for brotherhood's sake.
Yeah, so as you said, the vision of Francis was men and women, the poor Clares that follow St. Clare and the friars in St. Francis, and that group eventually got more or less, currently is the Friars Minor Conventual, the Friars Minor, we call the Brown Friars, and the Friars Minor Capuchin. And each of us have a little bit of a different tweak, right? It's a flavor. The Capuchins are certainly known for their spirituality and their poverty, more so. The Friars Minor, the OFMs, are very good about kind of creative and new ministries and very, very ministry focused. And the conventual branch has been focused a lot on brotherhood and really seeing community ministry flowing from brotherhood. And so to this day, we have like our house meetings, like the friary is the most powerful body in the order. And our style is very democratic as a community. So some interesting distinctions.
Yeah.
So that's who you're recruiting for. And where does this province of Our Lady of the Angels, where are we basically geographically?
We're kind of all over the place in many ways.
We are.
So the main chunk is east coast of the U.S. from our farthest north place is Massachusetts. Kind of think of a map.
Syracuse.
All the way down to Florida. And then there's a Canadian extension, if you will. We have a custody in Brazil, and we have a custody in England, Ireland. So a large swath of the English-speaking world. Although then we also have guys who wind up getting stationed in other provinces throughout the U.S. As kind of like provinces share friars with one another.
Help each other out. Yeah. So you represent the friars, and you're recruiting. Who's your ideal person? Like, what is it that you're looking for?
St. Francis?
St. Francis, yeah.
No. So I think the basics are, number one, we're looking for guys.
Men.
So you got to be a dude. Guys between the ages of 18 and 40. You could theoretically be a little younger than 18, so if you're in high school and you're thinking about it, that would be fine. You could enter right out of high school. It's rare, but it happens. It happened for me.
So you were how old when you joined pre-novitiate?
I was 17 when I started. Yeah.
I was 19. Okay.
Gotcha.
It happens, yeah.
And then 40s are cut off just because the process of formation is such that by the time you got done it, we want you to actually do some stuff. You have to be Catholic, and then just kind of a fundamental desire for living the religious life and the Franciscan charism. I think that's one of the things that I look for first in a guy of what's the motivation for seeking us out? Are you kind of just throwing stuff at every religious order possible to see what sticks? Or is there really something about us as Franciscans that draws you in and that you find life-giving and attractive? And then kind of once that very fundamental basic is done, which is kind of like the fundamental canon law of, right, you're a guy, you're Catholic, you have a desire for religious life. Do you have the ability to live the religious life, right? Because you could, a guy could really want to be a friar, but maybe it's like that wouldn't work out. So are they authentic? Are they real? Are they genuine people? Because I think that's kind of the outsider's perspective of the friars is always, I think, what draws them most is we're down to earth and we're approachable and we're real. So do I see that in a guy who's looking at us? Are they, for lack of a better term, normal? So are they relatable? Can people approach them? Are they going to be a person who in their ministerial life is going to draw others in to the faith? Or are they, like, oh, he might freak people out? Are they fraternal? So can they live in community? Right, because it's tough, and we kind of smooth out each other's rough edges, as it were. Iron sharpens iron. It's one of those proverbs. Are they self-aware? Because you don't have to be perfect. I think a lot of the guys, one of the flaws or traps is I think guys think that before they can enter religious life, I already have to be a saint, right?
Trust me.
It is not that, far from it. You're saying that I want to live a life that is fundamentally oriented toward the call to holiness within a community of brothers who are doing the same thing. And we are flawed and sometimes even broken people, but we share that with one another in community, and we help build each other up. So are you aware of your own brokenness and that's okay, and that you just want to help build that up in the fraternity? And I think the last thing I wrote down was, do you have an ability to be formed? So, which is one of the reasons for kind of the upper age limit of, after a certain point, you're kind of pretty well baked.
As a person.
And as a person, right? And you become less malleable. So, are you able to grow and change and be a different person in December than you were in January, and kind of mold yourself to within the community, right? Because you're joining something that's ultimately bigger than you, and at the end of the day, while you might inspire some change within the community, more so the direction is going to be the community is going to change who you are.
So it's that balance of gifts, right? So you're joining an 800-year-old organization within a 2,000-year-old church.
Right.
And like in my case, I live with men who are in their 80s, their 70s, their 60s, 50s, and 30s. And we help shape each other. And guys who've been doing this for 50, 60 years, they're pretty much set, And I say the same thing with people getting married. Like, when you're single, you have your way of doing things in your world, and then when you enter the sacrament of matrimony, you have to start thinking, it's not just two roommates with benefits, right? It's not like you're not going to split the bills halfway anymore. There's something new happens when you get married. There's a we that is created, and with incorporation in the order, we start thinking of we as a brotherhood, and that's sometimes hard, right? So I would tell people sometimes that a good image for that is the remote control. So if you're in a friary that has one TV with 8 men, and there's one remote control, who's going to have the control of that power? You know, that who's going to decide what we watch, and how do you share that, and how do you discuss that? In our house, we have 2 TVs, but one is anyways.
Cinema 1, Cinema 2.
Cinema 1, Cinema 2, yeah. But you get what I mean? It's you have to be malleable and open to growth. And when we're past our 40s or 50s, we're pretty much well-formed adults, and it's going to be difficult unless there's some really extraordinary circumstances. Yeah. So if a guy is listening to us, or somebody that they know, and they feel, well, you know, I don't know, but something tells me it's in the back of my mind, what kinds of things could they do to help themselves?
Sure. So I think it sounds trite, but I think the number one thing is to pray, to actually develop a prayer life. So participation in the sacraments, especially confession, Mass. And if we're talking about the process of discernment, how do I make clear? Discernment means to separate out. So how do I separate out kind of what my choices are to see them more clearly? So confession, which kind of forces you to do a little introspection and examine your life. Participation in Mass, uniting yourself more closely to the body of Christ. But also just, I often find in my own life that Mass is this weird way of knowing what's going on in your life, and you're sitting there and then you hear something in the readings and you're like, oh shoot, I'm supposed to be doing that. Spiritual direction, so if you don't know what that is, it's kind of like a guidance counselor for your soul and spiritual life. So it's just someone who you can talk to and bounce ideas off of. Their main job is just to listen to you and kind of keep their ear out for where is the Spirit moving in this person's life, what might be some different prayer methods that would be good for you. I think that's a good place to start. If you're looking for a spiritual director, I think good places to begin are either asking at your local parish if they have a list. I would avoid your local pastor just because I think you want a little separation there. Or the seminary in your area should have kind of a pre-formulated list, because it can be tough to find a spiritual director sometimes. I think doing the research, not being afraid to go online and seeing what you can find, reaching out to vocational directors. My email address, I'm sure when this gets posted on the YouTube, is going to be right in the info below.
It will.
Or you can link here and click to shoot me an email. I'm more than happy to help you out with discernment. And then also to try out different communities. You know, if you're thinking about getting married, you date people first, right? How is this actually going to work? I think one of the other main pratfall, besides guys thinking, you know, I'm not holy enough to join, is I've met a lot of guys who say a yes to kind of the abstract idea of religious life and being Franciscan. I like the spirituality, I like this philosophy, but I kind of say, well, hold on, you're not really saying yes to a philosophy. At the end of the day, you're saying yes to a really concrete group of men. So visit religious communities, spend time with them, get to know them. You know, for me, it was easy because I grew up with them, but that's not really as common anymore. You might not have any interaction with the guys you're looking at. So do what you need to do to give yourself the opportunity to say yes to something very concrete and real, and not just kind of the abstract idea.
You know, it's funny, Nick has come up with some new marketing tools, posters and graphics. There's one of the posters up there I put up. And what I really love is there's the San Damiano cross with the knots. But then the keywords you're using are real and Catholic. Mm-hmm. So it's got a variety of connotations, right? Real Catholic, because I think today a lot of young adults are looking for the authentic church, people who are faithful to the church. And fidelity to the church doesn't necessarily mean ultra-conservatism. Mm-hmm. I think fidelity to the church, as the friars are, means walking the middle of the road and being faithful to the fullness of the church, not one aspect. But I think it also seems to say that we're both real and Catholic. And if you look at the posters, you see, like, this is Frank, one of our friars, and the part that says real, he's out relaxing, and then the part Catholic, he's praying. So all of the posters are like that. And I guess you've said that repeatedly during this conversation, that we want people who are real.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that is part of our charism. The friars are very real.
We're very real.
Very
and,
real.
And I think people appreciate that authenticity. And I think that's what young people are really looking for, that they don't want sort of this artificial, you have to hide behind some sort of a mask or mold yourself into what some larger institution wants of you. That you're allowed to be who you really are and to be yourself.
So friars, Franciscans, our vision of both priesthood and brotherhood and ministry in general is not to be the superhero ahead of you leading the way, nor to be sort of dragging you back, but your brothers who walk with you on the journey of life. So I think it's really important if that's something that that appeals to you. Nick, so far you've been doing this work. What have been kind of the obstacles and opportunities that you faced?
Well, I think a unique obstacle now is COVID, because I had a long list of conferences and events that were on my calendar that kind of get killed off one by one. So that's tough, because you got to meet people in order to actually recruit them in. Beyond that, I wrote down, because you asked me this ahead of time, one, the lack of encouragement for vocations in the wider church. Like, I don't think people really push that at all, and we could have a very lengthy conversation about all the many reasons why that is. But I think a lot of those reasons on behalf of other people tend to be fundamentally selfish of why they don't encourage young men to think about it. I don't think they're always thinking about what's the good in the life of this young man. They're thinking of their own hang-ups. So, pushing something that doesn't get a lot of,
Support
outside,
Well, I think it's true. I know with my parents, I had to sort of hide my discernment for a long time until I told them, and my family knew the friars, and were close to the friars back in Europe. But that was not in their plans. I mean, I was going to buy the house behind our house, have 6 children, be an accountant, and my life was planned out. And so when I, came up with this idea, they freaked out, and it's a lot of Italian drama there. But I think parents in general are saying, do I want my son to be lonely? Do I want him to be miserable? Not to have sex, not to get married, not to have kids? Is that a fulfilling life in today, So I think a lot of parents worry, and it's not because they're anti-church, but they want their kids to be fulfilled, right? And it's understandable. That's why I think we need to have more open conversations with families and parents, and we have to do a better job of saying, my life is rich. I don't know about you, but I mean, it's like, no, I was telling Father James, our provincial, the other day, no day is like the other. There's always surprises. There's lots to do. I mean, I'm here at Assumption Church. I'm 58 years old. I hope to be here at least another 6 years. And then I'm going to go on to another adventure. And my brother-in-law was like, what? You're going to be like 60 and you're going to begin another adventure? I'm like, yes. My life is adventure after adventure. And I live with awesome people. Sometimes I want to strangle them, but they're basically awesome people. I minister to awesome people. I'm part of their lives. I travel all over the world. I've got brothers everywhere. I'm very, very satisfied and happy.
Yeah, it's really life-giving.
It is life-giving.
And obviously it has struggles, but
Yeah.
I defy you to show me the lifestyle that doesn't have that.
As a confessor, I know marriage has its struggles. Single life has its struggles. So yeah.
So that'd be one.
Okay. One up.
2 more. Second, I have become, in short order, just after 2 months, a little bit frustrated with members of my own millennial generation, because there's a big fear of commitment out there. And so I think they want to say yes, but then, they don't want to say yes forever. And I think an important thing there is, at the beginning you're not, right? The initial yes is just a postulancy, which is basically just 1 year of more intentional, intense discernment. And our final forever yes doesn't come until solemn vows, which for me was 7 years after my initial yes. So there's time there. So don't be afraid to make a commit. You're not signing on the dotted line day one, right? It's kind of a one step after another. And then I think the third thing in my own life of doing vocation ministry, the guys, the friars will say, oh, it's not about numbers, which is such a lie that, if I get to the end of the year and I say, well, we don't have anybody, I'm going to hear about it. So there's a felt pressure of...
Sure.
I think maybe it's to a degree irrationally felt of, well, the future of the province is kind of on me as long as I'm in this job. If we don't get people, that's it. So that is pressure filled.
And let me say that it's twofold, right? I was vocation director in Canada, and it's twofold because our friars, and I think our province of both Immaculate Conception and our previous provinces, but now OLA and you as a person, our friars are people of integrity for the great majority. We can't coerce somebody to be a friar. Like, it's not going to work. It'll just explode in our faces. So we have to make sure that it's the right fit. And if a vocation director gives you papers to sign up like the next day after he meets you, run.
Yeah.
Run for your life. Because he or she is not taking the time to really listen and to see if you're the right fit. And the community wants you to make the right decision because it's for your happiness, right? We're here to do God's will. So there's pressure on the vocation director to get numbers, but at the same time to do ministry. We're here to serve you in the discernment process. And if it's not the right place for you, regrettably, we have to say this is not the right place, even though we'd love to have the numbers.
Yeah, and I'd much rather have a guy be where he's actually meant to be. When I talk to guys, I kind of have them, and this goes back to my years of teaching high school boys, so it's very concrete, on a scale of 0 to 10, right, where 0 represents you've never thought about it, which clearly isn't the case by the time they're talking to me, and 10 is I'm ready to sign on the dotted line for whatever, where are you? And what can I do to help you move from, if you're a 7, to a 10, whatever the 10 looks like, whether that's you've discerned that you want to join us and we've discerned that we want you to join us, or whether that's you've discerned the Jesuits or the diocese or married life, then I think the job of any vocation director, obviously while there's a bias towards wanting to join your own community, is to get you to some sense of final commitment in your own life, whatever that looks like in your actual life, whatever your 10 is kind of what I strive for.
For sure.
And I think on the positive side, I have found the friars to be really supportive of the ministry and of me. The guys I live with have been great and kind of accommodating to what I need. This is my first real junket through New York and Pennsylvania part of the province. So it's made me appreciate the community even more, because there is that sense of, okay, I'm here and I'm home, and guys have had some allowance. Like, I know I haven't been at morning function this whole week because I just can't. But then to be around for evening prayer and stuff is really comforting and keeps that sense of rhythm and regularity that no matter where I am, with minor differences, you can pretty much figure out what's going on. And every friary is a friary at the end of the day, which is also kind of one of the great things about Catholicism generally. You could go to another country where you don't speak the language at all, and you could pretty quickly figure out where you are in the Mass. Similar thing in friar world of it's easy to I get it. I get where this is. So that's been really rewarding and really refreshing, and to have contact with guys who I don't necessarily always get to see otherwise. Because when I was doing high school ministry, that is so all just encompassing and just absorbs. It's very time consuming, and just absorbs all of you. So it's been an interesting shift to I get to make my own schedule and all that good stuff.
So what can the rest of us do to help you? Especially I'm thinking of, obviously there may be somebody here who's listening or watching who might have feelings of vocation, either men or women who are interested in religious life. but there's also the rest of us as a church. We're responsible for the church. So if you know of a young man or young woman, but for us, we're looking for men who might fit the bill, 18 to 40, single, Catholic, normal. Doesn't have to be a church mouse, like always at church. But often it's the people who come to a church events, who read, who usher, who volunteer at some of the ministry. Somebody that's healthy and that you think would be a good friar. How can we help you or help them?
Sure. I think that first part is important. I have very quickly trained my eyes to perk up at, is there a young man in your parish or your college campus ministry who lectors, or who's a Eucharistic minister, or who's been a long time altar server, or who is interested in ushering? Like if there's a young guy who's involved in a ministry in the church, statistically speaking, the NRVC did this study, the odds are pretty good that they've thought about a vocation before. Who are the people who are always there? So even if they're not actively engaged in a ministry, do they show up uncoerced, right? Not that their family's forcing them, but of their own accord. This guy shows up to Mass every week, or he's always at adoration, because that clearly says it's really important to him. And I think now, to use the cliche, now more than ever, because you really do have to go out of your way to go to Mass now, right? That it's easy to just say, well, I don't have to, so I can just stay home. So are they still showing up? Or where you have to, sign up, are they signing up to then be there? Because that probably means it's something important to them. And then when you see that, when you observe that, to just ask the question, have you thought about religious life? Have you thought about priesthood in a serious way? Sometimes I think our guys do this cutesy, like, oh, you look good in gray, or you look good in a hood, which is condescending and not real, but like a real, straightforward, have you thought about this? So ask the question. And the NRVC study also shows the more people who ask the question, the more likely the person is to actually think about it and say yes, and the effect compounds itself. So,
and that's a precise question I got. So John Rufo, when he was saying Mass at the college I was attending, one of our friars said to me, have you ever thought of being a friar? And I said, absolutely not. That's not me. And then
but it forces you to think about it. So if 3 people ask you, you are 3 times more likely to think about it than if 1 does. So 1, ask the question, but then 2, and I think it's especially important with younger guys, younger people, but also guys specifically, here's why I'm asking you the question, right? Here's the specific gift or trait or characteristic in you that I'm seeing that is leading me to say, hey, have you thought about this, right? Oh, you seem like participating in the church is something that really is a center and source of your meaning. Or it seems like when you do ministry in the church, it really fills you with joy and it makes you happy. Or I've seen you interact with other people and you're really empathetic empathic, and you're kind and you're giving and you're generous. And so name the gifts that you see, because the odds are they might not see that in themselves, which is what might lead them, well, no, I've never thought about this, that can't be me. And I think those 2 things, they sound really basic, but I think the basic things are really important. Sure. So keep an eye out. When you see something where your gut instinct says, man, this guy could be like a priest or a brother, ask the question clearly, precisely, and then follow it up with a, here's why I'm asking the question, here's what I see in you. And I think that would just be tremendously helpful. Right? Yeah,
because we have to believe the Holy Spirit works through all of us, right? We've all been given that Spirit and responsibility as a church to raise up. I mean, when guys make their vows or when we ordain friars for ministry, in ordained ministry, we say that the church has recognized this call in them. So feel free to do that. And of course to pray.
Yeah, of course.
So thank you, Nick, for this time.
Sure thing.
We wish you well. Thank you very much for watching today, this episode. Please keep Friar Nick in your prayers, and let's pray for vocation together, that God may bless our Franciscan friars with many more young men to live the life of St. Francis We're here in the kitchen of the Friary, actually, just to make this a little bit more homey. There's 10 of us who live here. And as I said before, there's a real variety of ages. So if you know somebody who's interested, they can also contact me here at the Friary and come for dinner and get to know what we're like.
There's plenty of guest rooms upstairs.
There's plenty of guest rooms.
Yeah.
All right. Have a great week. Bye.